you know, coming out. She was still feeling really grotty, and all the photographers looking at her and how awful she felt. I said I got there and I missed the picture and I was crying in the street. She said, you weren't the only one crying, because I got in the car and as I drove around the corner I was crying too, because it was all too much. And so, you know, there we were. We both cried that day.
Young mother, new royal and emerging fashion icon, interest in Diana was unrelenting. But the lens's ability to mask the reality of the royal marriage was limited. There was a twist in the fairy tale, and the press had to be careful how they told it.
First of all, it was just that she was losing her baby weight and getting her figure back, so that was sort of accepted. But then she started looking very, very bony. As soon as she got out of the car, you'd think, oh gosh, she looks so thin.
Pretty pictures of a happy couple, that was a nice story. The public wanted that. The public did not want to know that that fairy tale wedding, that it was all a sham. If you tell readers of national newspapers things they don't want to hear, they stop buying your newspaper.
The press were keen to make full use of the disturbing pictures, but wanted to avoid offending readers.
I think one has to realise one uses a photograph for impact, but cushions it by saying, you know, we're so worried about her.
Newspaper suggestions that Diana might be ill were met with an official denial. Years later, she spoke more openly about the bulimia she was suffering from. In the meantime, she became the darling of the British fashion industry.
After she had Prince Harry, she started to get a lot more sort of adventurous in her clothes, big hair, lots of jewellery. It was all becoming more and more great for pictures, and the sort of fashion icon bit started to build up.
We didn't know very much about Diana. There weren't many stories to write about Diana, so her clothes were very important. But in the meantime, it gave us great copy and great pictures.
In the early days, if a magazine just put Diana on the cover, even a headshot, it would sell, full stop, without a story behind it. You could fill pages and pages with the outfits, back views, side views.
People would be doing books on Diana's dresses, books on Diana's hats. Diana used to get off a plane or get out of a car at some event, and there'd be a secretary there giving you a piece of paper saying this dress was made by such and such a designer, the hat is made by this designer, and it's trimmed in this and it's done in that. It was a massive industry. Just this one woman. And I think she didn't realise half the time anyway herself. She used to sort of say bets with her policeman when she'd turn up in the job. I wonder how many photographers would be at a day, and he'd say 20. She'd say no, 10, and there'd be 30.
You were desperate to get the new hat at the right angles. The evening dresses we loved. You would say, right, okay, what I need is I need a good fashion shot, I need a good cover shot, I need a good jewellery shot maybe. So you'd go full length, half length, close up. You'd have this routine you would do. You'd shoot with a routine so that you make sure you've got what you need, because you know that's what they're going to ask for, your customers are going to ask for, and the magazine editors are going to ask for.
Jane Finch's family business supplied pictures on a freelance basis, mainly to magazines. Her customers could pick and choose from hundreds of images sent to them. Jane was under constant pressure to deliver the best shot. For staff photographers on newspapers, time was the enemy.
Princess, whatever she did, was news. I remember going up to Scotland and getting her being blown as she was going into church and being windswept, and getting an hysterical row with the editor because I was late getting the pictures back. No fault of mine, you know, it was a problem with planes and things. And him screaming at me saying, this is the most important woman in the world, you know, I've got to have these pictures. And so the pressure was all the time on you, but not to just get the pictures, but to get them back, to get the editions.
With such a huge demand for pictures of the princess, the stakes were high for the designers who dressed her.
You know that that hat has to look good because it's going to be seen by millions. And of course, one thing about the Princess of Wales, she did more or less play to millions. She really became a fashion icon in the sense that she was always wearing something new and exciting, and the press wanted to photograph her. You couldn't do the same thing twice.
But the world's most famous cover girl wasn't quite perfect.
There was a lot of stories at one point in the papers about has Diana had a nose job. And I said at the time, you know, if she has, you should ask for her money back because her nose could be quite difficult. If she turned slightly, her nose could look quite large at times, particularly when she was going through the sort of thinner periods of her life.
Diana learnt to show herself off to the best advantage. Every aspect of her appearance was under scrutiny, from her changing hairstyles to the detail in her outfits.
Every time she went to a country, she'd obviously think in advance about something she could wear that would sort of honour or have a theme to the country she was visiting. This was a great example of it in Japan, when she wore a dress that had the rising sun on, exactly like the Japanese flag she was standing next to. I think she was doing it for the photographers. I mean, she probably thought the host would like it too, but probably for the photographers more than anything. It was guaranteed to be on the front page the next day.
The type of publicity Diana generated wasn't always what the royal family wanted.
It became such a big problem for Prince Charles that he stopped us getting information about the clothes. And the pretext was that he was looking after her image and he wanted her to be more serious. But I think the truth was actually that he just didn't like all this attention paid to her. He thought it was frivolous, and it upstaged him.
But her clothes and the interest they provoked were becoming very useful to Diana.
On one occasion we were talking about her forthcoming French trip that was going to be very high profile, and she said, oh, you know, the trouble is I can't speak French, you know, I'm really thick, I can't speak French. But she said, but I've decided what I'll do instead, and they won't notice, is I'll dress from head to toe in Chanel when I step off the plane, and no one will notice that I don't understand or speak the language because they'll all be looking at what I'm wearing. And she did. She stepped off the plane and there it was, head to toe in Chanel. The French loved it. They were raving about it, and nobody commented about her not speaking French.
She was nervous about it.
She loved the idea, I knew it. She liked to think of herself wearing that dress. That's why she was laughing quite a lot and giggling. But at the same time, she knew she wasn't going to be able to because of the family she was coming from.
In 1994, Charles admitted his adultery with Camilla Parker Bowles on national television. Diana's fears of royal disapproval went out of the window.
We'd never seen her in a dress like that before, not that daring or that short.
And it was amazing, you know, to see her in so many photographs. Every newspaper had Diana on the front.
There's no doubt about it. She definitely used her clothes as a tool to portray a visual image or mood or a particular time of her life. And just by dressing in something, she could do that quite easily without having to say a word. So it's quite a powerful tool, really, when you think about it.
The Princess of Wales was the bread and butter of Jane Finch's family business.
People think that you made fortunes out of it, and everybody that took a picture of Diana would be a millionaire, and that's not true because you spent vast amounts following her around the world, and it was very expensive. So you weren't always making masses of money. But obviously it was a good living and it kept us all in a job.
Professional pride as much as money drove the photographers to be fiercely competitive. Diana couldn't fail to notice their daily antics.
As much as we spent our lives looking at her for 17 years, she spent her life looking at us. So, I mean, we were a great source of entertainment, watching us all tripping over and pushing each other and all vying for a spot of land with our ladder. I mean, if you stood back and watched it, it's a very funny scene. And she would often be in hysterics watching us.
On trips abroad with Diana, the traditional distance between press and royalty was broken down. Diana threw cocktail parties, at which she got to know her press entourage.
I mean, I suppose being, limited on the female company, she could always come and get the female gossip from me. You'd talk about anything from pop stars to film premieres she'd been to recently, and what did she think about this handsome film star she'd met, and clothes and the country she's visiting, what did she think about the food she was eating, literally anything. It'd be so casual.
On as well as off duty, Jane was sometimes treated differently as a woman, especially on visits to parts of the world like the Gulf states.
To sort of have a woman doing my role was quite unusual. They were quite interested to see me working with all the men, but they weren't quite sure how to handle me, particularly when it came to a push and shove. At a particular event where Diana was being presented with an Arab robe and it was going to be a very good picture, and they were pushing all the photographers back and they were in the wrong angle, and I sort of slipped out and moved around the side, and the security men didn't stop me or do anything. They just sort of, well, she's a lady, so let her go.
To beat the competition, it paid to keep up with the latest technology. Jane was the first to try out autofocus lenses in Canada in 1991, when Diana was reunited with her sons aboard the royal yacht. The result was a photographic scoop, and Diana's favourite shot, which she had framed in her dressing room at Kensington Palace.
To follow it with a normal camera with a lens was very difficult because she moved quite quickly and the light wasn't good, and it was everything technically was against you. This autofocus just loved it. It just locked on her and followed her all the way along, and boom, that one shot.
She had spotted the photographers, no doubt about that, and she had her arms outraised as she rushed along the deck. That went round the world, that photograph. And of course, 2 seconds later, Prince Charles got there and hugged his boys, but nobody ever saw those pictures. Nobody cared. Diana was always the story, always, always.
I remember doing some nice pictures at a polo match with Charles and Harry once, and they were lovely pictures, very sweet, very tender, but no one ever used them. They weren't so interested in it because it was him.
In the Prince's official 40th birthday portraits, he was pictured as the loving father at the centre of a happy family. Jane was invited to spend a morning at the family's country home, Highgrove House, taking the pictures.
The strange thing was, it's supposed to be at the point when everything had gone wrong in their lives and their marriage was over, but, and I can never get over this, that they just seemed really together. There was no jibing each other, there was a lot of laughter, a lot of contact. It didn't seem like they were acting or on just sort of giving me a performance.
But the couple were living separate lives. Charles had long since returned to his old love, Camilla Parker Bowles, and Diana had been having a passionate affair with James Hewitt for nearly 2 years.